Hello there and welcome to the Bitcoin Takeover podcast. This is season 16, episode 33. This episode is sponsored by Sideshift, Citrea, Bitcoin.com News, EdgeWallet, LayerTwo Labs, NoOnes.com, and HODLING.ch. And we are live with Liz Steininger, that's the correct way of saying it, and she's the CEO of Least Authority, a company which has a bunch of products which are basically constructed around the idea of security and privacy. And they also do a lot of auditing in the space. As far as I know, they have conducted more than 100 audits of open source projects in the crypto space and Bitcoin related stuff. And the company was also started by Zooko, which I thought was interesting. But I gotta ask you, Liz, before I let you introduce yourself further, isn't this a bit ironic that something that's called Least Authority has a CEO?
Yeah, you're not the first person to bring that up to me. And actually, that's something that I even thought about when I was going to take the job. So yeah, it's fun. I think that when you have, yeah, I think that when you have a company like ours, where kind of our mission and how we all work together as a team, yeah, we don't see it the same kind of hierarchy as perhaps like the regular corporate with the CEO. So, and I guess that in our own way, we look at authority even differently within the company, but out of a necessity, yeah, there has to be some level of authority because that's how companies work and how they interact with the rest of the world. So yeah, we try to find a balance there, that to have some structure and some leadership, but without it being authoritarian, I guess.
Before this interview, I tried to do my homework and I stumbled upon some literature on Least Authority. There is a paper by Nick Szabo. I'm not sure if you are familiar with the work of Nick Szabo, but he published that in 1995 and he tried to basically define what Least Authority is about, like the philosophy of this principle, and also he dated it back to some writings by James Madison.
Oh,
And
wow.
I thought that was very interesting. It's one of the founding American principles to have the kind of power which is more symbolic than it is coercive.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, for me personally, the idea that that individuals especially have autonomy and freedom and choice over what they do is incredibly important. So yeah, the idea of minimizing authority and thinking of authority more from a perspective of like what's necessary as opposed to what's wanted, for example, like because people like power. I think that that's like the approach of what's a necessity here and what's for the better of us collectively, etc., is a nice way to think of it. But I don't know that paper actually, which is sad. And now I'm gonna note to read it.
Yeah, I think Nick Szabo inspired Zooko quite a lot because they used to work together at DigiCash in the 90s.
Yeah, yeah,
And
that
yeah,
sounds
he
possible.
was much older, I think. Szabo was like 35 or something at the time. And he was working on his own digital money project, which was called BitGold,
Yeah,
which was like 90% of what Bitcoin is today, which is very fascinating.
yeah, and I was in a different space of tech at the time. But when did you say the paper came out?
1995.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I was just learning tech.
I was 3 years old.
I was a little older for sure. I was using tech by that age a lot. But yeah, I wasn't quite into that like level of tech yet. I was still trying to understand how it all worked. I think I was about 15. So
Right, so what's your background?
with tech, or yeah, let's stick with tech, yeah.
Sure.
Um, yeah, I mean, I got introduced to, I mean, technology's been something I love. And the internet was pretty fundamental to like when I was growing up and how that just changed everything. So this, being connected to people around the world was pretty interesting. Um, I got into like more of the regular kind of tech space, and then I found my way into like more towards open source, which was that also shifted things for me. That felt more like home in terms of like my beliefs about how people should function together and how we approach technology. And then luckily I also ended up in the like security space with tech, more on the side of looking at open source tools that help with secure communication, circumvention technologies, things like that. And
As I fix my camera, keep
yeah.
going. I forgot to plug the power source.
Oh, no worries. Yeah, so then I got into secure comms and like circumvention tech, and like that really got me to the side of privacy. Prior to that, I was much more on the kind of other side of the spectrum with transparency. And so, going from this like transparency side, not just open source, but like freedom of information, et cetera, and making sure information was accessible to like large populations, to then go on the privacy side was really interesting for me. And I think that has helped me to understand the two spaces and how we balance them in tech a little bit better, having gone to both sides. And so, yeah, I've been on the privacy side and the security side for a while now, about 10 years.
Okay, I should be back now. Anyway, I was going to ask you, why do you say that open source inspired you and made you feel closer to technology? Because in some ways it feels counterintuitive. And some of the first technology that we use, and in my case it was Windows and a PC that used the IBM architecture, that was not open source at all.
Yeah, true. I mean, yeah, that's been an interesting thing with the history of technology, like, and what we use. It's not all open source by any means, and it hasn't been. Yeah, I think what I like about open source is just this idea that, first off, it's the idea that people can connect and collaborate together on different levels. Like, it can be impromptu, it can be organized, that there's just more of this kind of openness to connecting with people on the same topic. That is, if things are all, oh, good, you're back. If everything's closed and proprietary, then seeking out that kind of connection it's a different kind of thing that you have to do. It's a different interaction that you have with people. And so it was that part. And then it's also this idea of independent verification and how that enables autonomy for anybody who wants to double check like the technology that they're interacting with. And so it's that part of like, yeah, just really that openness side of it that allows for, I think, really interesting magic to happen with technology that otherwise is very difficult to achieve whenever everything's closed.
At the same time, so in this Bitcoin space, we like to say don't trust, verify a lot, because the code is open source. And sometimes developers appeal to the fact that maybe tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of people have run their software, and they also assume a degree of verification. And auditing firms and companies that are conducting this sort of verification are regarded sort of like mammoths, right? Because we say, well, why do you need auditing if anyone can audit? And they will say, why do you need to appeal to someone's authority and say that these people are experts when anyone can be an expert?
Yeah, I think, so you're asking like, how do I think about that kind of concept of anybody can be an expert versus the experts?
No, basically, I'm questioning the legitimacy of companies like least authority in a space where hypothetically everyone can verify the code.
Yeah. I mean, I think hypothetical and the hypothetical versus the reality of it and the practicalness of it is where there's space for businesses like us. That it should be that hypothetically anybody could go verify this, verify the software and stuff like that, especially the open source. I mean, we can also talk about us verifying closed source software, which is something that anyone can't do. They need to have the special access and be, permitted, et cetera. But on the open source side, yeah, I think it should be that hypothetically anybody could. The reality is that people don't all want to put forth the effort to do that. And so I think that's where you need to have some trusted, like, the word trust is very difficult, but you need to have some parties that you're willing to, believe a bit or but you still, but again, we also, we take it also to the step of publishing the reports. I think that that's also very important, to publish the work so that there's accountability basically at every step along the way. And so that, again, that helps people better rely on the information, or this like, okay, I don't need to read the whole thing right now, but I know that I could if I wanted to. And the same thing with the code, that not everybody's going to sit down and read every piece of software, but can we distribute that kind of work in different ways and still hold people accountable? So yeah, I just think that there's space between the hypothetical and the reality of everybody doing it for there to be business for convenience. Yeah.
Since you've become CEO of Least Authority, do you recall any moments when you found something surprisingly bad in places you did not expect and you reported that?
Oh, like when we're auditing stuff?
Sure.
Yeah, we found some really surprising things for sure. For sure. But this is where it's nice that we get hired by the teams who want us to do the auditing, so they want us to find the problems and tell them before somebody else finds them. So yeah, that's also, again, a nice position to be in, like value wise, is that we're helping people who want help.
So for context, just to give the listeners a better understanding of what Least Authority is about, who are some of the clients that came to Least Authority and requested audits?
Oh, so many over the years. Yeah, we've done, I think, about 300 audits now, close to 300. I think we're close to breaking 300. But yeah, over the years, I mean, we've done audits even as far back in 2018 with Zcash, after they split out of Least Authority and we were no longer connected. We did audits for them all the way up. I mean, we've looked at Metamask. We've been hired by the Ethereum Foundation. We've done stuff in the Stacks ecosystem, Filecoin, Polygon, of course, in the other projects within the Bitcoin ecosystem too. Tezos, I can keep going.
I also saw that you audited the code for the KeyStone hardware wallet.
Yeah. Yeah, right now we are the Zcash security ecosystem lead. And for that role, we get to look at multiple Zcash projects, like with basically projects that are related to Zcash in the ecosystem. So yeah, that was one of them, I believe.
In my interview with Zooko, I think he mentioned, and it's a pretty long one, it takes about 6 hours to dive into that
really
massive information. Yeah. He mentioned something that Least Authority was able to basically predict that something like the DAO hack from 2016 could happen.
Yeah. Yeah. That was back it was, I think it was like about 2015. The team did the incentive analysis for Ethereum. And yeah, there was things like that found. Of course, it wasn't known. I mean, like we can recognize that there's potential for particular types of vulnerabilities, but we can't predict in the future how people are going to exploit them. But yeah, that to theorize that something like that could happen, definitely that came up in that report, and it's linked to from our website if people want to read it.
So how does it feel when you basically say that something can happen and the situation does not get addressed, and then you watch it happen?
Yeah, that's probably one of the downsides of the work that we do, because again, it's all of us who work, like I'm not the auditor myself, but that all of us who work towards this end of helping people become further secure their software and systems. We do it because we want to do it, not just because we're getting paid to do it, but because we want to, and because we believe that it actually helps. There's a purpose to it. And so then to have that work not avoid something it was trying to avoid, like not prevent something it was trying to help, yeah, it's probably one of the downsides to the work that we do. So that does happen occasionally. Luckily, it doesn't happen as often as it could.
But is this some sort of acknowledgement that you did a good job when you realize that, you discovered something theoretical, you realize it happened in practice, and it should feel I don't know, rewarding. You're like, yeah, I didn't waste my time on this. I actually discovered something before it happened.
Yeah, I mean, this is again the hard part about security, because like we don't get in the security business because we want to be proven right, like in that sense. We get into it because we want to help and a lot of the work that we do, we never know if it was successful, because it's hard to prove that you prevented something from happening. And so we don't get to see that. Yeah, but I think this idea of like, oh, I told you so. Is that rewarding? I don't know. I guess I guess it depends on what kind of reaction. I think in some cases, we don't want to be the ones saying, "I told you so," because we want them to instead. But I guess I guess there are some cases, yeah, where maybe our work wasn't taken seriously or something, and then yeah, that "I told you so" feeling, I guess it does come a little bit, but like I said, it's not a preferred feeling.
I've been asking people about audits, and sometimes I get the answer that the software changes so fast that if they do an audit and they're gonna get a rating or something, it's not conclusive for what the final product is gonna be like.
Yeah.
And this is why some projects avoid doing audits or altogether, but others
Yeah.
do it, but at the same time they have maybe a small change, maybe a few lines of code that sort of change the assumptions for their security and
Yeah.
might even lead to situations that were not part of the analysis. So when do you think is a good time to do an audit for any kind of open source project?
Yeah, unfortunately, it depends. I mean, I think if you have a target set of features and functionality for your product, like if you have that set in mind, then, and it's very clear and you're going to get there, then yeah, wait till you get there and do the audit. If your roadmap is such that you're going to launch prior to that, like with like a lesser set of features and functions, and then you're going to, add on more for like version 2 and 3 and stuff, then you can also plan those kinds of the initial comprehensive audit where we look at everything at the base, and then you can plan like diff audits, like looking at what actually changed and figuring it out. But it also depends on how you're building stuff as to whether the whole thing needs to be re-audited, or if you're building certain features and functions and components in a more modular way, etc. And so then there's just that limits the scope of where things could be impacted. Other teams, we definitely see teams who have less of a clear roadmap, and they're maybe not like their roadmap, they're building as maybe their users desire stuff or as the market needs change, etc., and they're trying to be more flexible. Then yeah, I mean, I think that there's still ways that you can get audits that are both like practical, affordable, and reasonable given the circumstances, but it also depends on who's relying on your code and your system. So if it's billions of dollars, then maybe it's worth getting some audits, even if you're going to have stuff re-audited. But if it's just, people's like pocket money for play and it's not a lot, then yeah, wait, what's the need?
But I gotta ask you, how does it work with liability? Like, maybe that you do the audit and you don't discover something, and I'm not only talking about least authority, I'm talking about any auditor. And
Yeah.
then something unforeseen is happening. And did you vouch for the system that it's good enough or secure, and then you have to basically pay? Or how does it work?
No, unfortunately, security just can't work like that. There's, whether it be like physical security or the security of a code base or any type of security, this idea that something is 100% secure and that can be guaranteed is false. It's like, I mean, you can even think about it like with your apartment or your car or something like that. If somebody said like, this car is impossible to break into, I 100% guarantee you, would you believe that? I mean,
Of course
probably
not.
not. Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah. So
do you remember that demonstration by Elon Musk when he tried to show that the window of his Cybertruck is not gonna break and he broke it?
yeah. I don't remember that, but that's a great example. Yeah, I mean, this idea that like somebody can guarantee you 100%, like that it's 100% secure is false. It's not real. That's not possible. And, I also think that that's that reflects how, I don't know, ingenious humans are, that like we will always find a way around. Like if somebody tells us we can't do something, or if something's like, this is perfect and you can't break into it, somebody's going to be like, I want to figure out how. And they will. And that's what's really lovely about the other side, is that, as humans, we're always trying to figure out how to break things and do things differently, et cetera. And that's really cool. But we have to realize that when it comes to security, that's going to be the case. And so, yeah, there is no such thing as guarantee. And so that has to be written into how the industry functions. And so not just us, like any auditing team or any security team, like we have to act to a certain level of professional responsibility to do a good job at what we do, but we can't be expected to not miss something. I think, but again, it's like this kind of what's the industry standard professional level of responsibility that you can expect. And that is easier in more established industries, like like car security, for example, like how keys are handled and stuff like that. I don't know if it's the best example here, but like within the crypto space, it's been a little bit more challenging, that like this idea of like security norms and stuff and expectations and stuff. It takes some time for those to settle as the new innovations and technologies changing, et cetera. But yeah, we're not expected to do 100% guarantees for sure. And you should be suspicious if anyone tells you that you're certified secure.
Yeah, and even if you design the perfect security system, you can still route around it at the social level. So you can just do some social engineering and route around that complicated cryptography.
Yep.
And get some other human being to act in a way that destroys the system, or at least grants you access inside.
Yeah, it's just like passwords. You can follow all of those recommendations when you're creating that login to like make sure that you have a special character and a number, and that it's like 16, like, whatever. That you can follow all those recommendations, but if you put it on a Post-it note on next to your computer, then what good is the strong password? So yeah, security is just not that simple, that, even if we manage to find all the vulnerabilities in the code, there could still be another way.
And a lot of these situations in our industry were exchange hacks, where maybe that the exchanges themselves were audited and secure and the funds were fine, but all it took was someone to SIM swap some employee and get access from the inside.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Or maybe just befriend someone. Like I remember there was this, I think it was in 2021 with the Pfizer leaks, that's what they called them. Like everything was being kept, like everything about that process was being kept very secretly. I don't know how I should describe it better. And there was this investigation journalist who basically got someone to confess during a date, like just someone working for that company having a casual conversation about what's happening at work. And that's how a lot of the information got leaked.
Yeah, it's not surprising.
So if you want to route around very secure environments, sometimes all it takes is just find the right person who's weak. And that's the weakest link.
For sure. Good advice. I mean, it's good advice to people who want to protect against that.
Sure. And watch out for what kind of information you're telling your family members, and see how reliable they are, because maybe your mom is talking too much to her friends or something. And her friends have sons who are not very friendly.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm going to plug a couple of ads, and then I want to get back to least authority, because I feel like we haven't covered everything about the vision and the mission of the project.
Yeah.
But I still wanted to leave the first part to some information which people might find interesting about auditing in general. And I guess most of my sponsors are open source. Let me pick one of them. LayerTwo Labs. They're building sidechains for Bitcoin. And all they need to deploy is BIP 300, which you can read on the BIP page on the Bitcoin Core project GitHub. And basically, if this one comes to Bitcoin, we're going to get a Zcash sidechain, an Ethereum sidechain, basically all of the stuff that Least Authority has audited over the years, but using BTC, the token, on a sidechain which is secured by the Bitcoin miners. You can check out the software today at LayerTwoLabs.com/download. And I think right now it runs on the Bitcoin Signet. And there's also Citrea, which is trying to bring ZKE rollups, which is something that was built by Ethereum thanks to Zcash, which, once again, were both audited by Least Authority. And they are trying to bring this to Bitcoin. Now they're on the Bitcoin testnet, and they're expected to launch later this year. And basically what Citrea is doing is to bring some extra financial applications that Bitcoin currently does not have, and enable builders to also bring some applications from Ethereum on top of the Bitcoin base layer. And the way in which they do it is by inscribing some zero-knowledge proofs into the Bitcoin blockchain that they use for verification purposes. It's very interesting, it's ambitious, and you can already test the software today at citrea.xyz. And they have, I think, an application that you can download for pretty much every operating system. And there's also EdgeWallet, which is, once again, an open source software wallet, which I don't think was audited by Least Authority, at least not yet. But they do have support for assets which were audited by Least Authority. And they function on the principle that they try to not store any kind of information that can link to the user. So everything is encrypted on your device. It has easy access to pretty much everything, and it's like a built-in exchange in which you can swap between assets. So if someone sends you a coin that you don't like, you can actually use the built-in swapping features to get the coin that you want without KYC. And they also have a duress mode, which is good for security. If someone is watching you unlock your wallet, or someone at the airport asks you to unlock your wallet, you can type a different PIN, and you're going to get another screen which shows that you have zero balance, and you can just say, oh, I downloaded this because a friend told me to. But in reality, you're traveling with like $1 million in Bitcoin. Anyway, it's pretty cool. You can download this for free at edge.app. And thanks, guys, for sponsoring the show. Now let's go back to Least Authority. Not that I haven't plugged them already during the sponsor presentation. But so your assistant, or I don't know exactly what he does, but he made a list of talking points, which I find slightly offensive, as if I don't know what I should talk about. But at the same time, I also find it useful because sometimes it helps me ask questions that I wouldn't think about. And he mentioned that we should explore Least Authority as a principle, with reducing centralized control, increasing user sovereignty, and designing cryptographic systems with minimal trust assumptions. Yeah. What is this about, and how does Least Authority, the company, apply this?
Yeah, so this is I think early on you mentioned that we have some products, and this is the direction that we go when we do our own development activities, like open source development, is looking to really minimize the need for like things like personal information. So because the more personal information, then it's reliance on the service, etc. Minimize like centralization. That kind of stuff, and making sure that the systems are privacy respecting for sure. So I can talk a bit more about those.
I see that on your website you have free products, which are PrivateStorage, ZKAPs, and Winden.
Yeah. So PrivateStorage, for that one, that's live, and you can go sign up for it. It's like a consumer app, so for individuals to go use, and it's low cost, but basically as a client-side application. And that client-side application, it doesn't use username or password. There's not personal information needed to like sign up for an account or anything like that. You have to do some personal information for making the payments, but we use the ZKAPs that are mentioned, the zero knowledge access passes. We use basically zero knowledge proofs to ensure that the payment information that we get from people doesn't get connected to their usage of the storage service, so that there's clear privacy in the use of the storage service. But yeah, with private storage, like I was saying, it's a client-side application, so you get to keep things. The user has full control of what's happening with the software on their local machine, and it does client-side encryption and sharding of the text of the data. And so the data that gets stored with our servers is basically sharded ciphertext. And so we can't put the shards back together, and we can't decrypt them. And so you don't have to trust the private storage service at all, or the servers that we use or anything like that. And so that's private storage. And the zero knowledge access passes, ZKAPs that you mentioned, those aren't really a standalone product. I wish they were, but they aren't quite. But that's what we created, and there's a white paper about it. It's basic. It's it's a technique based on privacy pass. But yeah, basically using these zero knowledge proofs to allow people to have disconnect, or make sure that the information isn't connected, I should say, between the payment step and the usage of the storage service. And then Winden is a spin-off from, it uses something called Magic Wormhole, which is basically a way to send files. So it's a file transfer protocol. And Winden, it's winden.app. You can go to the website, and that's free to use. And it's just a way to send files between two machines. It's free, and there's no personal information required to use it. So you don't have to use an email address, set up an account. You don't have to give a phone number or anything like that. So you could basically use it anonymously with another person or another device to send files. So again, minimizing the trust needed.
So what this sounds like to me is that you have a private Google Drive and a private WeTransfer.
Yeah.
And basically something that dissociates between the payer and the payee, so that you don't know what they actually bought.
Well, the payment step for sure. So like in the case of private storage, you buy storage time from us. So we know who bought storage time from us. Because we got that, we had to, as a business, we know who bought it from us. Unless they bought it with, actually, we don't know all the people who bought storage time. Actually, there are ways. You can buy it with cash with a proxy store that's online. You can pay them cash to buy storage time. And so then we definitely don't know who you are because it was through a reseller, for example. It's basically a reselling program that you can use cash with. There's ways that we don't know everybody who bought storage time, but if we happen to know that you bought storage time with a credit card, whether or not you use that storage time or when you use that storage time, we never have any idea. So you could basically give that storage time to someone else or something like that, or resell it, I guess, if you wanted to. It's not super easy to do that stuff, but you could, and we wouldn't know, basically. So then we know that people are using our service, but we just can't connect it to who bought the storage time.
Is it open source?
Yeah, all of it.
So basically anyone can create their own version of private storage and maybe accept Bitcoin or Zcash or whatever for payments to basically not run this as a business, but more like a protocol.
Oh, you mean what do you mean? Like a protocol to prevent, like for just buying storage time?
To sort of decentralize from having a company in the middle. Yeah,
I mean, like our job as the company with private storage is more around the kind of it's more around the hosting and management of the storage servers than anything else. And just you can basically take the code base, and also private storage is built off of a code base called Tahoe LAFS, which is, open source, old school.
Least authority file system. That's
exactly. That's the LAFS part. And not named after I don't think it's really like meant to attach to the company. It's just meaning the principle of least authority. Yeah, so that's all open source. So yeah, you and your friends could, and the wonderful thing about Tahoe Laughs is that it can be used as like client server model, or it can be used as like a P2P model. So you don't necessarily have to have storage servers that are different from the client machines that are, like syncing or whatever the data. So, or like, yeah, syncing the data with each other. So you could, you and a bunch of friends could all install Tahoe Laughs inside of your own P2P network and, store on each other's machines, etc. And you would still get the client-side encryption and the sharding and everything, because that's in that. But not everybody wants to do that work. So, the kind of business part with PrivateStorage is more of the convenience that there's a managed cloud that's operated on your behalf, like operated for you. And you don't have to worry about like server uptime, et cetera, and server access. So
your ZKAPs are built for the purpose of providing privacy to the person paying with credit card, I guess. That's kind of the goal for this.
Yeah, for the payment types that don't provide you privacy. Yeah.
But can you think of ways in which this can be used for something else?
Oh, for sure. That's why I do wish that ZKAPs was a standalone product, because it could be used for all kinds of other services. Basically, any service where the service provider doesn't have a fundamental need to know your identity. Yeah, we shouldn't be. But there's so many things out there, like so many services out there that we give identifying information to the provider just purely for the payment part, not for any other purpose. Like, for example, like electricity, I think, VPN, there's all kinds of things where they don't really need to know who you are to provide you the service. So, but the reason they do is because you have to set up an account and you have to give them information so that they can manage the accounting side of stuff, the like payment side of stuff. So
I think that NIM, the Mixnet, mentioned that they're using something similar for allowing their customers, or is it ZKAPs that they're using?
No, I don't think I haven't spoken to them about it or looked deeply in what they're using, but I did see that they've since added something like that. Yeah, we did, like the ZCAP stuff that we've done is based on Privacy Pass, which is something that was started with Cloudflare and Tor. And so it's all kind of, you know how open source works. And that's how it should work. Like that, like somebody builds something, somebody's like, oh, that's a really cool thing, but I want it to be slightly different for this other use case. And so then they adapt it for a different use case. Like in the case of with like Cloudflare and Tor, like, they had a very particular like use case for that they needed to develop Privacy Pass for. And then, our use case was pretty different, but that we could use the same concept and some of the code too.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Yeah.
I mean, it's very similar, and I can understand why Zooko would want to build something like this, because it's similar with what DigiCash was trying to do. Basically, create a way for credit card payments on the internet to be anonymous. Yeah. Of course, it's not as powerful as that, but it's a pretty good second best to that. If you want to pay with your credit card on the internet, you call it ZKAPs. I was calling it ZKAPs.
Yeah.
But it's something which a lot of companies should look into.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it comes back to this whole value system about like privacy for users and privacy for individuals to be able, and this idea that I want to control when I share certain information with people. And a lot of the tech that we interact with right now doesn't have respect for people's privacy at every level. But, for us, it was this concept of like, okay, we are offering this wonderful private storage, like where we have people, where they don't have to trust the servers that they're giving their sharded encrypted data to, but they're giving us data when they're paying us. Like, so if we want to operate a business in line with our values, how can we, prevent that information from being linked by us? And I think that I wish more businesses would ask themselves, like, do we really need this information? But unfortunately, the tech industry, a couple decades ago went down the path of more data, collecting personal data holds value, et cetera. And yeah, luckily that's starting to, the tide has been changing, but there's still a ways to go.
And also Winden, which is Winden, is a
Yeah.
very good one to remember, because a lot of times I run into this issue of I want to send a large file, Telegram will not allow it,
Yeah.
WhatsApp has even lower limits, Gmail is horrible. I think their limit is still like 25 megabytes unless you want to buy more storage from Google.
Yeah.
And you have all of these services that promise to not store your files, but most likely do,
Yeah.
because you're not paying them anything for it. And this one basically, so Winden, what it does is that it lets you send large files between two peers. And I know that back in the day we used to set up FTP for sending files to each other, and that was not encrypted. That
Yeah.
was not anonymous in any way. So you could have almost no privacy. Maybe the only privacy is that only you and the person receiving the data knew the exact FTP address, but maybe someone else could get involved in the middle.
Yeah.
And for a while, it was fashionable to use torrents for this kind of stuff. I don't know
Yeah.
what happened to torrents. They're not as popular anymore, but they're not quite a solution for sending between two peers. They're more like a way to disperse data around the internet to make everything more censorship resistant and harder to take down. But
Yeah.
Winden sounds very cool. Like it's actually something that I've been searching for.
Yeah. Yeah, and we got funded with grants basically to get it to the point it is now. I think there should be some information on that Winden.app website where it says we got like EU funding, et cetera, to build it. It's not monetized by us right now. We just maintain it. But it's not too expensive to maintain. But yeah, so for that, it's a really nice tool. We have found that like one really popular use case is just sending something between your like laptop and your phone, for example, like or like your like because I don't know, but we did a poll, but most of the people I talk to too, it's this like you usually like maybe send an email or you have to use like a cloud drive or something like that when you just want to put a file between two devices. Like you don't really always need to store it on the cloud. You just want to send it. And no, yeah, people don't really like to plug their devices together anymore. We all want stuff to be wireless. And so, yeah, it's really great for that. And then there's other cases like, you need to send personal documents to a service provider, like a lawyer, an accountant, or something like that, healthcare docs. I mean, some of those, the bigger businesses have their own systems to manage, like document management systems. But if it's just like, your freelance lawyer and you or something like that, those could be good cases where, you could avoid email. And depending on so avoiding the use of a third party tool that will store your sensitive file. Yeah, because if it sits in your email inbox, then if your inbox is hacked, then somebody has access to it, etc. And the whole service provider does too. Whereas, yeah, with Winden, it's kind of ephemeral. But right now, both devices have to be online at the same time to receive it because it's not being stored.
Right. So it says that Winden is end-to-end encrypted, which is beautiful, but also
Yeah.
that it's identity free. And
Yeah.
I'm not sure what this means. It says further that meaning that senders and receivers don't need to know each other's identity to use it. So how does the person know where they're receiving from?
Well, I mean, I guess it depends on your use case of when you don't want to know that person. But yeah, you could send them. Basically, it's this human readable code that you can give them, and so you could send that via another communication platform, be it anonymous or not, or you could speak it to somebody. It's supposed to be speakable was the human readable part too, so that you could say it over the phone or if you're in person together. You can also just like show them visually the code in person, and so that they don't have to write it down anywhere. So there's no record of, basically then that also allows you to have no record of the exchange of a file between two parties. And because there's no personal data being gathered by us, like phone number, there's no phone, like you don't need to have your phone number added, like with some tools you do. You don't need to have an account set up or anything like that. Yeah, you don't need to use your email address, anything. So we have no idea whose file was sent when and to who. And that's nice.
It's really beautiful.
Yeah.
I should try this with my friend.
Yeah. Yeah, we hope to be able to add more features and expand on it in the future, but at the moment, unfortunately, we haven't been able to get another grant to do more to it. But so if anyone out there wants to work with us on it, let us know. Otherwise, it's open source, so people are also welcome to fork it and do as they please.
Yeah. Are there any other products that are in development or products that used to be supported by least authority but have been discontinued?
No, I don't think so. I should say on Winden, there's another app. There's also a mobile app version of it. It's called Destiny, though. Again, different grant, so it has a different name, but it's still this magic wormhole protocol allowing you to send files. So yeah, there is also mobile apps version of it too, because Winden is just a web app.
Oh, I did find this on your website. So it's listed under Community Matters. It's called Destiny. And it says it's an open source file transfer application that does not reveal identities.
Yeah. And we received another grant to work on that. We're still maintaining it okay, but I do think at some point in time, these kinds of things we won't be able to maintain forever without figuring out additional funding approaches for them, because they're not monetized. Like Winden and Destiny are not monetized at all at this point. So, but this is a bigger problem within the open source industry that
Yeah, exactly. Like, how do you make money?
Yeah. I mean, we could rely on donations from people, but that always, but that has its challenges, as you know. And then we're not opposed to that kind of model, but it just comes with its own set of challenges. You can't have any kind of predictability of the donations that are coming in for these services. So the support for them ongoing is difficult. Grants, going from grant to grant, grant givers usually want to see some sort of, shiny new thing, like shiny new feature, etc. But just maintaining open source stuff that people like, it's not that exciting. But teams like ours are happy to do that kind of stuff. It's just, we also have to pay rent and stuff like that.
I gotta say that I use a lot of open source software. So for this podcast right now, for the live stream, I use something that's called OBS, which is open broadcast software.
Nice.
And this one is being supported by a bunch of companies, basically, which are using the software for their own products. And I also use something that's called Podcast Generator to put the audio file and basically generate an RSS feed that gets grabbed by Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And so I think it has some trade-offs because it's not as authoritative as something which is owned by Spotify or something. Maybe it affects discoverability or whatever, but I do like it a lot.
Yeah, I mean, that kind of model where you have larger companies that are utilizing the software for their own needs, maybe, therefore profiting off of use of that software, and therefore then supporting the software. It sounds like they've got a set of people doing that. That model, that works. Yeah, that works too. But all models have their trade-offs for sure, and you have to have enough of those kinds of companies using the software. Unfortunately, I think things like Winden haven't been just the way that it's modeled for consumers. I don't see large companies wanting to come in and support it, but I don't know, surprise me if you would disagree. Anyone can reach out to us and let us know. But yeah, it's definitely been a bit of a challenge for us because we see that there's a clear need for individuals to use this kind of software. But yeah, what's the right kind of model to have it supported? I mean, another one possibly is freemium or something like that, where the lower tier of service is free and the higher tiers are paid. But yeah, we just we didn't get to implementing any of that.
I see that something else on the website of Least Authority is called HRO Cloud. It's also listed under Community Matters, and it stands for Human Rights Organizations Cloud. And it I guess it's very similar with PrivateStorage.
It is basically private storage, but a version where it's not paid. It's instead based on qualifications. So, and that's also where the flexibility of the ZKAPs approach came in for us, that we can basically issue storage time based on proof of payment, which is what we do for private storage. But in this case, we issued storage time tokens for proof of qualification. So proof of being a human rights organization. We are going to have to shut down HRO Cloud again due to like the grant that we had that was funding that ended a long time ago, and we maintained it a little bit longer. But yeah, but it is essentially private storage, just unpaid for those orgs.
I see that you also have something very funny, which is called the Moon Math Manual.
Yeah.
And it's a resource for anyone interested in understanding and unlocking the potential of ZK snarks from beginners to experts.
Yeah.
How did this come about?
Yeah, if you can't tell from our conversation so far between the history of Zcash and like our general, like, working on ZKAPs and stuff like that, we like zero knowledge proofs and we have a lot of experience with them. And so, yeah, our team decided that it would be good to, basically write a manual about how ZK snarks in particular work. But yeah, this idea of zero knowledge proofs. It started out with one of our team members, Mirko. He was doing some workshops with like pen and paper kind of explanations with the cryptography behind ZK. And he did that workshop and it was just a success with people. And it was just this idea that, how do we make how zero knowledge proofs, like the math and stuff, accessible to more people? We were talking earlier about how, this idea that hypothetically anybody could audit software. And, hypothetically anybody can learn how to work with zero knowledge proofs. And, so we decided to do like a manual that helps more people have access to this kind of knowledge. Of course, you wouldn't necessarily want to do like something super advanced without doing maybe more studying, maybe getting a degree or something like that with like, but, also regular developers need regular people who are interested in this tech need to have some sort of manual too. So it's kind of like a textbook for regular people to read about how ZK works.
Yeah, it's really cool. I'm browsing through it right now, and I wish I found it sooner. Like I've learned about this from so many spread around resources. Like it wasn't disorganized. It's actually pretty cool. But how did the name Moon Math come around?
I think it comes from at one point Vitalik called the ZKP stuff like it's like moon math, because it seems like magic and it seems like kind of out there, but it's real and it works. So it's an older name. I think it's from probably, I don't know, 6 years ago or something. I don't know how long it's been. 5, 4. But yeah, I think there was a blog post or something about it that he called it moon math.
I want to ask you more about privacy and the protocols that you're building and to which extent you're getting in trouble with legal authorities or whatever, investigations, and to which extent you have the data that they're asking for. But before that, let me plug all the sponsors of the show.
Okay.
So Sideshift.ai is the place where you can swap pretty much everything for whatever it is that you like. So for example, if someone wants to pay you in stable coins, and honestly, why would you want to hold onto that trusted CBDC? You can basically send them your Bitcoin address. By them, I mean Sideshift. And the person wanting to send you stable coins will send their stable coins, and then you get your BTC to the address that you want. And they have a lot of trading pairs, a lot of liquidity, and they're even integrated with the sponsor that I previously mentioned, which is EdgeWallet, among lots of other integrations like Trezor, and I think also Ledger, and a bunch of others. So check them out. Sideshift.ai is the website, and I think they do a pretty good job with this. They're an exchange which does not require mandatory sign-up. So I think that's pretty cool. Also, there is Bitcoin.com News, which is a news website that has gotten much better over the years, and I appreciate it for the fact that it shows and covers a lot of news from around the world. For example, I just opened their page and I found a headline that says Belarus proposes introduction of digital currencies to BRICS settlement layer system. So basically, It's not as US centric as other websites, and I can get a much broader view of what's happening with the Bitcoin industry from Bitcoin.com news. And they used to be green because they were supporting Bitcoin Cash, the fork of Bitcoin, which has big blocks. Now they are orange, and you can see that for yourself when you go to news.bitcoin.com. HODLING.ch is also a very interesting business because they specialize in self-custody and they're based in Switzerland. So if you're a Bitcoin whale or you're part of a company that's about to buy Bitcoin, you go to them and they're going to explain to you to which extent you need to use hardware wallets or multi-sig setups or something complicated at all. They tailor the solution according to the needs of the customer, and they also give you the privacy that comes with a Swiss company. Also, if you lost part of your seed phrase for recovering your funds and you don't know how you can access your coins, they can help you with that by trying to brute force the seed phrase, but I think it only works if you lost less than 4 words. But anyway, it's worth a try, and of course they charge a fee for that. And their website is HODLING, HODLING.ch. And last but not least, there is Nuance, which is a peer-to-peer exchange that aims to empower the global south. And their CEO, Ray Youssef, is very adamant about this vision of allowing citizens of the third world to join this peer-to-peer economy. If you want to provide liquidity to this peer-to-peer economy, you can trade on Nuance.com, Noones.com. And something else that's interesting is that they have a debit card for spending if you're into that. And also they have a spot exchange where you can basically trade whatever coin you have for some other coin that you want. And of course they specialize in gift cards because it seems like it's a very hot commodity that is very much appreciated in the global south and is being used to swap around to get access to cash. So Nuance.com, check it out. And now let's get to the uncomfortable question, Liz, which is about law enforcement and the fact that they are nosy sometimes. And the fact that with zero knowledge proofs, sometimes you might not have the information that they seek.
Yeah, well, I think that that's one of the keys to designing systems with the use of zero knowledge proofs and like privacy tech and like other privacy tech is that it's really important to design it in a way for all parties involved who have some different interests. But mostly, I mean, I think it's just fundamentally giving the control or as much control as possible to the individual user. But yeah, I don't know. The interests are not always at odds with each other.
I don't know if it's at odds with each other, but I do know that over the years regulations have gotten ridiculous, and using something which does not store the information is much more efficient.
Yeah, that's so. If we don't collect certain data, then we don't need to be prompted to share that data, for example. And so we always ask ourselves, like, what do we have to collect? Like, what are we legally responsible to collect? And what do we, if we don't need to collect it for some other regulation or purpose, then let's not.
I used to deal with some privacy companies in the Bitcoin space, and they were based on the British Virgin Islands, Cayman Islands, and all sorts of places where they were trying to basically stay away from the European Union, from the US, from the NSA as much as they could. And least authority is based in Germany, as far as I know.
Yeah.
So how does that work? How are you able to operate from Germany?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it really depends on like what you're like what particular like use case or data you're talking about, because it really just depends on what we have to collect and what we don't have to collect. But we definitely try to minimize what we collect, or just not collect anything unless we have to.
How do you see the privacy market right now? Do you think it's booming? There's more demand for it than before? Or is it constant over the years?
The privacy industry, you mean, in like privacy tech and like its popularity? I mean, it's definitely changed. When I first, like back in 2013, I remember like the Snowden revelations, and how this idea of like surveillance and stuff was just so new to everybody. But at least like thinking about like, Americans and Europeans, that, I mean, yeah, Europeans had some indication of it. I wasn't in Europe back in 2013, but some indication of it. I mean, that's where GDPR came from. So trying to, control like the levels of data, personal data that was collected about people, and minimize that, I think is a really good move. I mean, again, I understand people's like, some people don't like regulations, and over regulation is like maybe not good, but having a regulation to tell tech companies to not collect as much personal data seems helpful at this point, because it's helped to keep in check some of the big tech companies that are just collecting data, way too much data about us as individuals, and we don't really have a way to fight back against that without something like GDPR. So yeah, from that angle, it's nice to be a company in Germany, because we've got things like the data protection regulations here, and then the German ones are good too. And those help the rights of individuals when it comes to going up against big tech.
I think I saw some sort of advertisement at one point on YouTube, if I'm not mistaken, for WhatsApp, and they were saying that they're a private platform because they do have end-to-end encryption for the messages, but they have no privacy for the metadata, which is who is sending to whom and when. And I think there's a lot of data that can come from this.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Do you see any application of zero-knowledge proofs for this particular use case? And do you believe that maybe in the next decade, we're going to have the large players in this messaging space or social media adopt this zero-knowledge proof technology?
I mean, yeah, I think that, I'll answer first the adoption thing. There are so many different potential uses for zero-knowledge proofs when you're trying to control like what data gets shared at what point. So this idea that you can prove that you have something, that you know something without actually sharing the data itself is so valuable from a business perspective. Like, individual privacy rights aside, like just coming to like businesses and confidentiality and wanting to interact like with other companies, but not share your data, like the cooperation between companies, et cetera. There are so many use cases for that. So for sure, big tech, everybody, I think a lot of tech companies and other people will start to need zero knowledge proofs, or will recognize what the zero knowledge proofs can provide to them and how to integrate them into systems. And some of them probably already are doing a lot with them. I think Google just talked about something with the wallet or something with zero knowledge proofs, but I'm not so up to date on that news. But then, I guess the first part of your question though was about like individuals and their privacy rights with the tech.
Yeah, sort of. Because, for example, right now I'm subscribed to the Apple service, like what's it called? Apple Plus or whatever. And with that, I also get sort of a VPN. And also I get private logins. Ani, I can just give you the cable. You don't have to get in front of the camera. Anyway. Yes, you are on camera. It becomes sort of a standard across the industry when you have Apple promising to offer better privacy and also integrating some services natively without even having to think about it. And something else that they have is, I don't know what they call it, but it's like email masking, where they generate sub-addresses for your email address for every service so that they don't know exactly who you are. I think that's also cool.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. So then, I mean, those are great examples of how the tech industry is advancing when it comes to privacy tech. I mean, I don't know if they're perfect examples because I don't know specifically like the problems with those ones, but just in general, this idea that like consumers are demanding and more interested in, these kinds of privacy features, whether or not they're legitimate or they're going as far as they need to is the next important question, but I do like to see the increase of demand in companies trying to offer stuff.
I also got to ask you about least authority. Are most of the customers related to Zcash and Bitcoin and the cryptocurrency space, or do you also audit code for open source projects which are unrelated?
You mean like non-crypto projects?
Yeah.
Or crypto in the previous sense of the word as in
Cryptography,
cryptography.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, we get some requests for that, but not as much as I would like to see. I think it's a funding challenge, because when it comes to like cryptos and cryptocurrency and the blockchain Web3 space, like there's funding. So people are building things, and people are then, also able to get stuff audited. And there's like the transfer of value, that the kind of connection to like quote money is what makes it like, more of a necessity or more prioritized that they get audits. Regular, like the kind of open source cryptography type projects, we see some of them, but a lot of them end up getting audits through different support mechanisms, because again, they have the funding challenges that we talked about earlier. And so like there's different orgs out there that will basically do third-party funding of audits. And so they go more that route. And at least there's those offerings out there now. Back when I was at Open Tech Fund a while back, yeah, that was still pretty more new that audits were being funded for these kinds of open source projects, but more so it's happening.
It seems like nowadays we have this sub branch of computer science and software development, which is called vibe coding. And this just means that some people are telling a large language model exactly
Yeah.
what it is that they want to build. And they're going to get recommendations based on open source projects which are available and do something similar and can be pieced together to fulfill a
Oh,
greater
interesting.
goal. But it's not necessarily true that these open source projects are the best ones or the most efficient ones or even secure. And sometimes when I see that people are vibe coding, I'm just thinking that auditors are going to get rich. And I was curious if you actually saw a spike of activity or demand since vibe coding became a thing.
No, we haven't seen like a spike yet. I mean, it's definitely now a new area that's happening for sure. Like that there, I mean, and there are kind of different angles on this too, that there are people who are vibe coding, and, depending on like what they're doing, whether like what kind of audit they need and what kind of like independent verification basically that they need of what they're producing with AI together. Yeah, I think we'll see more of that for sure. Whether or not that's big business, I mean, I agree with you. These things should be audited, because like, I mean, if people can't, like, if anything by themselves, like, so this is where I think like just regular programmers can help out, like just with the quality assurance, like not just even the security check, but the quality check on like what are we getting when we vibe code? Are we getting something like what's the kind of quality standard there? And then of course security should be thought about too. But yeah, I'm not sure how that market will really form, because a lot of people are doing this for fun, right? And so do you want to go hire somebody to audit something that you just did for fun? I mean, you didn't bother to hire programmers to build it in the first place. So are you going to hire a service provider to audit it? I don't know.
Oh, in the land of Ethereum and Solana, you have a bunch of people who build smart contracts using vibe coding,
Oh, yeah.
which means that they're just copying something that already exists and might not be the best design for that. I mean, it's very hard to assess. It's up to the language model to pick something, and then the person will just think it's the best option that they have. And I think that whoever audits these smart contracts, which are designed for the purpose of making money at the end of the day,
Yeah.
is gonna end up making a lot of money.
Yeah, if it's smart, yeah, I was thinking about like just vibe coding like an app for yourself, like as an individual or like, small company or something, just like, hey, we just want this little app, like a web app or something. But if you're talking about like, yeah, vibe coding for smart contracts and then trying to manage money, then yeah, there's probably a different level of value there in getting the security audit than there would be.
Does least authority deal with smart contracts too on Ethereum,
Yeah.
or is it just zero knowledge stuff?
No. We do all kinds of audits. We've done plenty of smart contract audits for sure.
What is a project that you would like to see for least authority, like a significant audit that maybe is like a dream project?
Oh, ah, you know what? We like, yeah, we really enjoy new applications with advanced cryptography. So ZKP, but also new applications with like FHE, and yeah, that's the other one that comes to mind. Of course, MPC, like we've done a lot with multi-party computation with wallets already, but if people have like kind of new combinations of advanced cryptography and new like stringing these together, combining them different ways, I think Lattice is another cryptography thing that I've heard of the team talk about that they would like to do more of. So yeah, anything that's like new applications with cryptography are super interesting for us, and they're nice they're like the kind of good challenge for us because we've done so many of those over the years that you get practiced at looking at new stuff, and it's a different kind of learning, but it's fun.
Least Authority has previously audited the Zcash code, and Zcash is built on top of the Bitcoin code.
Yeah.
And I was wondering if this indirectly was an audit of the whole Bitcoin code base.
Oh, that's an interesting question, and I don't have a good answer for that. I mean, it wouldn't be much for somebody to look at the Zcash report and to then see, do any of the issues found translate to the Bitcoin code base? It's a good question. I don't have the answer right now, but I will definitely pose that to the team afterwards.
Because basically Zcash is the zero cash protocol applied to the Bitcoin design.
Yeah.
But I guess that the audit was mostly for the ZK side of things.
Oh, it's so long ago. That was 2018. I haven't read that report in years, but yeah, that would be really interesting to look back. I can report back to you later. Well, look back at the report. Somebody already might know the answer on the team, but off the top of my head, I don't know right now, and I'm sorry.
Okay. Is there anything that Least Authority is doing that's really interesting and you feel like I haven't asked you about it?
Oh, I mean, you covered a lot of what we're doing with like we talked about like PrivateStorage and Winden and yeah, ZKAPs and everything, and even the moon math manual you got. So you're very thorough on our website. I mean, I think one thing we didn't talk much about that I would like to see more in the industry is kind of the next level with the security, like with the approach to audits and how we are handling security within the industry. And like for us, like one important thing along the lines of open source is this idea of publishing reports. About half of our work ends up getting published, not all of it. And we still encourage like our clients to publish reports. Of course, there's sometimes good reasons why the reports don't get published, but I would love to see more like across the industry, more audit reports getting published. And it would be really great to see what as an industry we can do with all that data too, and how we can make that data more accessible for users. So like we audit all these tools, but if you're a regular user and you're just like, yeah, can you read, like there's different levels of problems going from like a PDF audit report to, the end user who's trying to make an educated decision about like which crypto products they're interacting with. And there's no reason why we can't connect those two, so all this data about security vulnerabilities and how they've been fixed, like, so there's the vulnerability side and then there's the fix side. And like how those could be, analyzed, like collected and analyzed for the, kind of learning of the industry. And then also how could those, like these kind of, okay, this protocol, this, smart contract, this wallet, they've not only got audited, but they did all these fixes. And then how do you like kind of communicate that to the consumer in a more effective way? That's where I'd really love to see more progress in the industry. And it's been kind of stalled. Like, no, we don't see too much. I think you mentioned earlier, like getting scored, like a security score. I think that's the closest, like in that direction that we've gone, but the security score is just not enough.
Wait, so the way in which this works is that you get contracted privately and you submit the report also privately, and it's up to the contractor to publish it?
I mean, we get hired to do an audit for a team, and then it's up to the team whether or not the results of our work get published. Yeah.
It's a bit disappointing given that this is all open source, but I can understand why, because they
Yeah.
might be concerned that some people exploit some issue before the team gets to fix it first.
Well, we don't publish reports until the team has an opportunity to fix stuff. So we don't publish initial audit reports. Occasionally a team will, and that's not a good idea. That's the final audit report after things have been addressed. So one valid reason for not publishing a report is that you don't intend to fix the things that we found. And so then, yeah, you wouldn't want to publish that report, because if you're like, then we're just telling, the world some vulnerabilities. But that's, problematic for another reason, which is that you should be fixing the vulnerabilities that have been reported to you. But sometimes there is a legitimate reason to not to, if you're going to replace the system, if you're going to like completely recode it, because we found some significant vulnerabilities, and then the team says, okay, we need to like totally redo this. So then that makes sense as to why the audit report wouldn't get published. But otherwise, yeah, I mean, it would be good to have more of them published.
So what happens if, let's say that you're in the middle of an audit and someone else finds an exploit that you are about to report? Like, is there going to be suspicion that the team auditing has exploited the bug?
No, we communicate pretty quickly to the client team if we're starting to find something. So hopefully we would be able to, basically talk about it before. And then it also depends on if the system is live or not. Like if the code base we're looking at is live in production, or if it's, pre-launch. So if it's pre-launch, then there's less of a risk for that kind of thing, obviously. But if it's already live, then yeah. But as soon as we find stuff during a review, we're chatting about it usually with the team. And then we, format that into a full issue that goes into the report.
It says on your website that you have 295 plus completed security audits. That's why you said 300 or almost 300.
Yeah.
And 150 plus security audit clients, and half of your clients are returning customers, which I think is nice.
Yeah. Yeah, it is nice to get to work with teams again. So there's some really great teams in the industry who are taking security seriously, and that's nice. But yeah, it'd be great to see more of the audit reports by the entire industry out there, like by all parties, getting all those getting published. And then, like I said, more analysis and sharing of that information with people.
Which auditing firms would you say are competing currently with least authority?
It depends on the project. It depends on the potential client that we're working with. So like there are some auditing firms that focus only on smart contracts. So they would compete with us on those, but not on like protocols. And there's other firms that are specializing in like cryptography or ZK or something. So yeah, it just depends.
I guess most of the competent developers in the space have built their own auditing firms, and that pays off pretty well. I think Sergio Lerner, the person who is behind the study that's called Patoshi, and he is the first person to say that Satoshi Nakamoto might have mined 1 million Bitcoin. He also had something called CoinFirm that was auditing. I think it's CoinFirm. Let me double check. Oh, but it seems like it was acquired.
Yeah, it's a lot changes over the years. We do try to keep some awareness of like the other teams that are doing similar work to us, and some relationships and stuff there, but it's definitely challenging over the years because firms kind of come and go.
And it's pretty remarkable that you have been around for such a long time, honestly. Like this space is changing so much.
Yeah. Well, there's good years and bad years for everyone.
Is there anything else that I didn't ask you about, but you really wanted me to for the purpose of this interview?
Oh gosh, I can't think of it. But it's been great talking to you about all these topics. We could talk for 5 more hours, but not today, I guess.
Yeah, you told me you have a couple of hours for this. And for correctness purposes, I gotta say that the name of Sergio Lerner's company is CoinSpect, not CoinFirm. CoinFirm
Oh,
is a blockchain analysis firm, so it was a pretty bad mistake on my behalf. It's CoinSpect. And it says that CoinSpect was used by Zcash to audit the internal code base and its forks.
oh, cool. Yeah, well, Zcash has also been around for a long time now. I mean, our audit was in 2018 that we did, and then our more recent audits of things while we've been the ecosystem security lead has only been like the last couple of years. So that's a long time. I mean, you probably talked about that with Zooko. I'm assuming about how long they've been around too.
Well, yeah. I mean, Zero Cash was published in 2013 by a bunch of researchers,
Yeah.
and it took them 3 years to launch an altcoin, basically, because they were hoping that they were gonna add this to Bitcoin.
Yeah. Do you think we ever will?
I sure hope so. That's why I'm still going.
Yeah. That's why
Like,
you're still going?
I think this technology has matured a lot, and
Yeah.
it's much closer to the initial expectations, and it sort of exceeds the initial expectations. And if
Yeah.
we actually don't use it, I guess that's how the entire world loses, because you have such good research in this field, and then it's not being used for the purpose of improving the industry. And
Yeah.
you just have small islands of projects that choose to use a certain type of technology, which is exciting, but not the end goal.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just, in some ways it feels like we've been doing this for a long time because we have been, but in other ways it feels like we're still just so early in all of this that, it's a long game that, technology like advancement and adoption just takes time. I try to stay grounded by thinking back to like the early days of the internet and what was it, Gopher? And then like how that changed over the years to what it is now, where like the idea of being unconnected from the internet is like so crazy. It's like being without running water. Um,
I know I
diff-
spent like 3 days without a phone because I had issues with the screen and I serviced it, and it felt like I was actually handicapped. I couldn't use maps. I
yeah,
couldn't access my calendar on the go. I couldn't check my messages. I had
yeah.
to basically be home and check my computer. And
Yeah, it's great. I mean, I remember reading paper maps, and now, like, I still, I mean, I learned how to do that, and I still can't imagine being without a maps program on my phone. And yeah, we've come so far, but it's taken a while too, to go from those early days, and when people were saying like about like e-commerce, like people didn't believe e-commerce was going to be a thing, and so yeah, and here we are now, and a lot, yeah, e-commerce is definitely a thing. I mean, we don't even call it e-commerce anymore. It's such a thing to buy things online that we don't even really like differentiate anymore what it is. And yeah, I think that when it comes to like the whole crypto space and this idea of like digital money and privacy and stuff, well, I mean, privacy is a slightly different conversation, but when it comes to the idea of like yeah, the transfer of value digitally, we are just at the beginning, it seems. And yeah, privacy to me is a necessity. So I think with time we will all discover that if we really want to see mass adoption on this tech, then privacy has to be front and center.
just for the record, what was your first computer?
Well, the computer I was around or I recall using.
I don't know. The first computer you had in your home.
Oh, it was one of those like I don't remember using it, but I sold like 20 of them on eBay when I was older. But we had these like magnetic tape drive computers. I don't know what those are called. I forget what they're called. But then we definitely had a Commodore 64 and like Ataris. Atari is the first one I remember though. And then like a PC and the first laptops. I got to use one of those. I remember playing chess on like chess and solitaire were all you could really play game wise on the early laptops.
What was your first laptop then? Do you know the exact brand and model? Or what kind of software it was running? I'm actually curious.
Oh, I'd have to look it up. It's been like 10 years at least since I even thought about the name of it. But yeah, I forget the name of those laptops, but I remember using them when I was like it had to have been in like 92. So I don't know what, like, but they were heavy and thick, and they were expensive enough that I didn't get my own. It was before people started getting their own laptops. I think that was closer to like 98 or something when people started getting their own laptops. Or there probably wasn't even much laptops. It was probably still mostly desktops. So, was it like the X85 or something like that? I don't know. I'll look it up.
X85 laptop. Let's see.
If we can Google while we're on the show, I can quickly Google it, search for it. Laptop.
No, I find some sort of keyboard.
So I'm totally off on that. But there are, like, I see ThinkPads going back. But I don't know if it was a laptop, if it was a ThinkPad.
So maybe it was made by IBM or something. One company that was building computers in the 90s and I don't see it around anymore is Compaq.
Yeah.
It was pretty huge.
Yeah, that name sounds familiar too.
And Fujitsu Siemens, that was also pretty big.
Yeah, but I would have to double check what that was.
Anyway, the reason why I asked you this is that usually I have like a special phrase or a couple of words that I ask people to write in the comments to prove that they listened until the end of the episode. So I ask you about your first computer or something, hoping that I'm gonna get a brand and a model, but you can say whatever.
Oh, I just don't remember. I'm sorry. I remember using AOL.
AOL, that's a pretty good message to write in the comments.
Like, I think AOL was that before your time? It seems I'm older. I don't know if you were using AOL or if it was like out of fashion by the time you were at a computer.
I started out with IRC, I think.
Yeah.
And then Yahoo Messenger. It was pretty big in my country.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
my American
AOL.
friends were using MSN.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a little bit later. AOL I remember that. Oh, and yeah. The early memories of using computers were also that little turtle that you like gave it directions, but I also don't remember what that program was called. The little turtle that you told it to like go search. It was like early programming or like, I don't know, games. Anyway. But
I actually think that's on a Raspberry Pi OS, and you have something like that. It's called Scratch or whatever.
oh, Scratch. Though Scratch is different. Scratch is like an app for like it teaches you the basics of programming without writing code.
Yeah,
I think
exactly.
yeah. No, this was like you coded to tell a turtle where to go. But it wasn't like, yeah, anyway, I don't, again, I was young. I just remember using it. I don't remember the names of this stuff, but I remember using AOL. So there, you can use AOL.
Yeah, type AOL in the comments. And if there's any one product that you should try after listening to this and you don't have to pay anything for it, it's Winden. Check it out.
That's your favorite.
It's my favorite because I've
Nice.
been searching for something like this for a long time.
Well, if you have any like feedback for us at any time about it or tips or anything or any ideas for what to do with it in the future, let us know.
I can also write pull requests on GitHub, right?
Yeah, it's all open source, so you can contribute too.
Thank you very much, Liz.
Yeah,
It's been
thanks for
fun
having me.
to chat, and I feel like I've learned a lot of new stuff over the last couple of hours. And
Awesome.
best of luck with the auditing. It's gonna be a big business in the era of vibe coding, I'm telling you.
Good to know. Well, yeah, if you want to give us advice on how you think that should be marketed, let us know.
Okay. Thank you very much, and I'll see you in the next one.